This lecture is going to cover dimensional analysis and doing this with non-metric conversions. So remember that we will use dimensional analysis with the factor label method, so we are finding conversion factors that can help us go from one unit to the next. So we're creating those equivalent statements. So recall that proper conversions requires keeping track of your units and making sure that they cancel. So this is one thing a lot of you need to just keep in mind, keeping track of your units. You need to write your units out. I know it seems like it's a little bit too much to do, but I promise it will help you in the end. Also, oops, there we go. I just got done talking about that. Units are very, very important. And then one thing to keep note of is that not all conversions will require metric conversions, and that's what we've done already, is we've done metric. So this is using it with non-metric things. So let's do a few examples here. Now, this first one is how many feet are in 19 inches. So most of us are very well aware of how many feet are in, or how many inches are in a foot. So that makes this kind of easy. There will be times that I will give you equivalent statements, so you'll set those up as a factor label tile. There will be times where I expect that you know things, such as this one right here. So when you're doing this, you always want to start with what you're given. So we are given that we have 19 inches. And we want to end up with feet. So if I create my tile here, I need an equivalent statement that has feet and inches. Now remember that I put inches at the bottom here, because in order for my unit of inches to cancel, they have to be on the opposite. So it's top here, bottom here. Now they're going to cancel. So we all know that there are 12 inches in 1 foot. That color is kind of hard to read. 12 inches in 1 feet, 1 foot, it's fine. So then we'll just do our math here. Remember that you multiply on the top and you divide on the bottom. So we're going to take 19 and we are going to divide it by 12. And we are going to get 1.58. We're just going to round for right now, 1.58. My unit is going to be feet. Okay, easy enough. Moving on to the next one. How many seconds are in 16 weeks? So we got to see what we're going to start out with here. So we're starting out with weeks. 16 weeks. What do we know about weeks? We know how many days there are in a week, right? So I can say that 1 week has 7 days. So why did I put weeks on the bottom? Why did I know that went there? Because it allows it to cancel. If I were to stop right now, what I would get would be how many days there would be in 16 weeks. So you can always check to see what unit you are currently in, what unit has canceled. So from here, do we know how many seconds are in a day? Probably not, but we do know how many hours there are in a day, right? So I know that there are 24 hours in 1 day. So remember again, I knew to put days on the bottom because days was on the top here and I wanted that to cancel, which means if I stopped at this point and didn't go any further, I would find out how many hours were in 16 weeks. But we don't want to stop there. We want to keep going. Do we know how many seconds there are in an hour? Some of you might, some of you might not. We'll go ahead and assume that we don't. We know that in 1 hour, though, there are 60 minutes. Once again, why did we put the hour on the bottom? Because hour was on top here, bottom here, will make them cancel. If I stopped at this point, I would know how many minutes there were in 16 weeks. but we want to know how many seconds, so then we're going to keep going. And then we know that in 1 minute there are 60 seconds. Once again, how did we know which way to put it? Because we wanted to make sure that our units canceled, minutes canceled, and now I'm going to know how many seconds there are, which is what the question is asking. Now, don't be afraid to set your stuff up in one line here. You do not have to you don't have to calculate and then reset it, and then calculate, then reset. Just set it up as one thing here because your units all cancel, so now we just have to do the math. So remember again that we multiply the top, we divide the bottom. So I'm going to take 16 times 7. And now the nice thing about this is if I divide by 1, it's going to give me the same thing, so I don't really have to do anything. Times 24 times 60 times 60, and we get a number 9,676,800. So if we put this in scientific notation, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9.6. We're going to round for right now. 9.68 times 10 to the, what did I say? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 10 to the 6th. What's my units? If I just go back up here, seconds. It's the only one that didn't cancel out, so that's the units that I'm in. Alright, so one that might be a little bit more difficult because we're not as familiar with these unit conversions or these equivalent statements. How many miles are in 5,400 inches? So always start with what you're given. We're given 5,400 inches. Set up my tile. The equivalent statement that I'm given is 1 mile equals 5,280 feet. So I can't use that yet because I'm in inches and I need inches to cancel. So I cannot just go straight to this because then I'm going to be lost because I'm going to have units that don't cancel out. I'm going to have extra units. So we want to make sure that we're getting rid of units as we go. So the unit I want to get rid of right now is going to be inches. And it would be helpful if I could get inches into miles or into feet because that's an equivalent statement that I've been given. So we know that we can easily do one with the feet here. Okay, so we know that there are 12 inches in 1 foot. So if you remember back to the last one, if I were to stop now, I would know how many feet there were in 5,400 inches, but that's not quite what we want. We want miles. So we're going to keep going. Now I can use this equivalent statement that was provided for me. 1 mile equals 5,280 feet. So because feet is on top here, we want it to go on the bottom in my tile. 5,280 feet is 1 mile. So check my units, my feet cancel, and I'm left with miles is going to be the unit that I'm going to end up with once I do my math. So let's go ahead and do our math here. We're going to have 5,400. We would multiply by 1. We don't need to do that because we know that keeps it the same. Divided by 12. And then we're going to divide by 5,280. It's going to give me 0.085 miles. You can write that in scientific notation if you'd like. So you get 8.5 times 10 to the negative second miles. All right, so the last one, this one's going to take us a little bit longer. It's going to be a little bit more tricky. So make sure you're following along here. Convert 36 centimeters per second to miles per hour. We are given that 2.54 centimeters equals 1 inch, and that once again 1 mile equals 5,280 feet. So when you are setting this up, we are given 36 centimeters per second. When we write that, it's 36 centimeters per second. And if it's per second, that really means 1 second. So if you want to put the 1 there, you can. So now I have 2 units that I have to take care of and 2 units that I have to convert. My suggestion and what I always do is I convert 1 unit at a time. So let's just start with the top. We want to get centimeters into miles. Now it's important that you're able to recognize that those are both length units and that seconds and hours are both time units. So you're converting centimeters to miles and you're converting seconds into hours. We're not converting centimeters into hours. That doesn't make sense, okay? But it's important that you're able to recognize which units match up. So I want to go from centimeters to miles. So I'm going to just pay attention to this centimeters unit at this point. So centimeters, can I go right to miles? Probably not, but I can go from centimeters to inches as provided for us in the problem here. So we know that 2.54 centimeters is equal to 1 inch. So my centimeters cancel and I'm left with inches. And if I were to stop right here, I'd get inches per second because remember we do have that second unit there. But not done. I want to get those inches into feet because we're given an equivalent statement that has feet in it. We know that 12 inches is 1 foot. So looking here, my inches cancel. I'm going to be in feet. If I stop right now, feet per second, not quite where we want to be. But now we can use this equivalent statement provided for us to get 5,280 feet in 1 mile. So what units cancel? Feet cancel, and I would be left with miles per second. Now, so we're close, right? Our length unit is what we want it to be, but our time unit is not. So we need to work on our time unit now. So if seconds is on the bottom here, I need it to be on the top here, okay? So remember, this is just one long line. Anywhere you put these, your units can still cancel. Do we know how many seconds are in an hour? Maybe, maybe not. If not, we can go from seconds to minutes. So this is 60 seconds in 1 minute. So looking here, seconds cancel because it was on the bottom and it was on the top. So if I stopped now, I would be in miles per minute. So we're getting closer, but that's not right exactly where we want to be. So I can do one more where I know that there are 60 minutes in 1 hour. Looking at this, my minutes cancel and I'm left with hours. Now look what unit I have on the top. The only unit I have left on the top is miles. The only unit I have left on the bottom is hours. And look at this, what we want. We want miles per hour. So we are left with the units that we want. Now comes time to do the math. So we're going to start out with 36. And we are going to multiply by, so we're on, let me highlight as we go. We're on this one right here. We're going to multiply by 1. We know it stays the same, divided by 2.54. Then we are going to go to this one. We're going to multiply by 1, then divide by 12. Then we're going to get to this one. We're going to multiply by 1, then divide by 5,280. And then we're going to go here. We're going to multiply by 60. Then we're dividing by 1. And then we're here. We're going to multiply by 60. And then we're going to divide by 1. So what we end up with is a number that looks like 0. Or I'm going to round again, 81 miles per hour. All right, so I will give you an equivalence sheet. So once you are done with these, let me know, and I'll give you one that gives you some some things like these that you might not be so common or might not be so familiar with, and go ahead and work on some practice problems and let me know if you need any help.